I'm waiting on them to give me some information about how they want the system.
All right, so thanks so much for joining this presentation. We're going to be talking about interactive PowerPoint templates and how to make them.
want to do is have so many people in one space.
I think a lot of times we think about PowerPoint as a presentation to do with slides. You make up your slides and you present them. But the truth is that there's a lot of other things that we can do with it. And I think this presentation, we'll see a whole bunch of that going on. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat there's about 5 or 6 comments here that the here we go. Finally found my button. Looks like I'm still on, and I think we got all the other ones off. We're going to ask that everybody keep their webcams off as well as their microphones off. So I think we've got that. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we've got everybody muted now. I think we're in good shape. So thank you for your patience with. For some reason, I've got headphones in, and I don't know why, but I can't hear it. So yeah, we'll try to do better with all that. Phew. Okay, glad we got that all taken care of. So what do you say we talk about interactive PowerPoint templates now? Everybody good with that? So let's start off here. I was kind of alluding to this just a second ago, that PowerPoint is for presentations. I think it's easy to think, and by the way, I saw this in the chat too. Somebody dropped the G word in and asked if any of this stuff will work with Google Slides, and the answer is yes. The same stuff that I'll show you in PowerPoint, you can definitely do in Google Slides too. But with any slide presentation tool, it's for way more than presentations. I think it's easy for us to get kind of a narrow mindset and say, okay, PowerPoint is for doing presentations on a projector in front of class, and Word is for typing essays. And whenever we get kind of in that narrow mindset, there's such little that we can do with those tools. But whenever we can see what's possible, and there's an awful lot that is possible, then it starts to open up our minds for how we can use some of these tools in different ways. And I'll tell you what, I really think that whenever we use the tools that we have in multiple different ways, then this saves us from overwhelming our students with a whole bunch of different websites and apps and different things. If we could focus on just a few of them that can do multiple things, then we lose less time trying to teach kids new tools, which I think is huge, especially during remote learning. In any sort of remote learning, a hybrid learning environment where students might have to learn a new tool on their own, that's just so tough. And being able to get more out of the tools that we have is huge. And that's what we're going to be talking about when it comes to PowerPoint here. So it is for way more than presentations. Now, to give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about when it comes to templates, let me get to that link in just a second. So when I tell you about a template, here's the idea behind it. Here's what I'm looking for. Is a template is a file that you create and then you share out with all of your students, so that they're able to do something with it or do something on it. So you're kind of creating almost like the master or the main one, and then you're getting copies out to all of the students. And this is way more than digital worksheets. This is way more than just fill in the blank on a question or choose from multiple choices. We've got lots and lots that we can do with this. Now, when it comes to that, there's a whole bunch of pre-made templates that I have on my website that I wanted to share with you just real quick. So let me switch over real fast to show you those. It's at ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint templates. I'm about to put that back up on the screen in just a second, but I want to show you what the site looks like. ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. So in this session, I'm going to talk about what it takes to make brand new templates that you can share out with all of your students, but the truth is that there are lots of them pre-made for you in this post. So again, it's right up here at the top. I know it's kind of small, so I'll put the slide up again in just a second. Or if somebody wants to put that into the chat so that you can click on it, that would be awesome too. Ditch that textbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. And if you start to scroll, you'll see that we have some of them that are like Snapchat themed. We've got some that are Instagram themed, TikTok themed. We've got an entire interactive notebook that's done in a PowerPoint template, sticky notes. These are templates for infographics. So I'm not going to touch on all of these. In fact, I have an entire session. Oh, boom, Patsy and David dropped the link in. Thank you so much for doing that. I have an entire session that goes through the pre-made templates that I have on my site. But in this one, we're going to be talking about making new ones. So if you're interested in kind of checking all of these out, you can head right over to that link. Again, it's ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. And with any of these, you'll notice that you can read a blog post about them and then you can download them. So Terry says she loves the sticky notes one. It looks like it's kind of like free Padlet. Yeah, which is totally true. You know, Padlet can feel kind of like a big digital bulletin board that you can put sticky notes on. And this template right here kind of does that same thing. So, so anyway, there's a whole bunch of, you know how they've got teachers pay teachers, you know, where people put like, they put, you know, worksheets and templates and different things up there, and then they sell them for just a few dollars a piece or sometimes more. See, I don't have a teachers pay teachers account. I just make stuff and I give it away for free. So this is one of those places where you can find all of those. Hopefully that's a preferred way to do it, is to get it for free instead of having to drop a couple bucks on it every single time. So those are all of my PowerPoint templates that you can check out. So with that said, there's the link one more time in case you're interested in checking those out. And again, it is in the chat as well. So, oh, I'm seeing the comments there. You know about the free too. All right, it's not just me. So, so definitely go check those out. I did want to, since I'm in the mood for giving things away for free, I wanted to touch on this real quick, and then I promise we're going to dig right into PowerPoint templates. I've got these 3 free ebooks that I offer on my website if you sign up for my email newsletter. And then there's the link to do it right there. It's at ditchthattextbook.com/101. I'm going to put that in. And you'll notice that one of the free ebooks is this one right here called 50 Free Templates for Teachers. And this has all sorts of the same kinds of templates that you're going to see in this presentation and that you just saw on that templates page that you can assign right away to your students. So it's got a whole bunch of these practical ideas. And if you sign up for the email newsletter, you'll get regular, you know, like once a week, you'll get updates in your inbox with new practical ways that you can use technology in your classroom. So that's at ditchthattextbook.com/101. I just put the link into the chat if you want to go get signed up for that. Okay, so we got all of the free stuff out ahead of time. See, sometimes people make you wait till the end to get the free stuff. I'm just like front loading you with all of the good stuff. So I see this question in the chat from Anne saying, Matt, do you have a link for Google templates like those in PowerPoint? And the answer is yes. If you go to my website, up in the resources in the top right, if you look in that little drop down, there's a place for templates. And then that has links to Google Slides versions of all of those. So. Okay, with that in mind, just so you kind of get a feel for how this whole templates thing works in general, this is kind of the workflow that we're going to be talking about here. So the big focus of this session is step 1 on this page, which is create a template where students can work. We're going to be creating these interactive activities that we can distribute out to our students. And so once we're done with that, in the big scheme of things, what you would do is go on to step 2, which is assign them to students with the make a copy for each student option. So if you're working within Microsoft, then you're doing this in Teams. You're creating an assignment. you're attaching your template to it, and then you say students edit their own copy. And so that's that. And then, you know, in other learning management systems, they have versions of this as well. And then students open it up, they work on them, and then they submit them back to the teacher for grading. So, so anyway, that's kind of the whole thing. I see a comment in here from Caitlin saying, I'm having latency with my webcam and mic. Yep, I live in a rural area where the internet is not fantastic. And so this is the best version of me that you're gonna get. So I'm gonna do the best that I can with what I've got. So, okay, so that's kind of the general idea of how the whole thing works. Now, let's get down to the nitty gritty here and let's actually look at what you can do as far as these templates go. Like if you want to, thanks, Caitlin. And so if you want to be able to do this, number one, so that you can assign it to your students and then they can work on it, this is kind of what it might look like. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up. This is one of the templates that I have in my great big template library that I was just showing you a second ago. And this one is called the Interactive Notebook. And the reason I bring this one up as an example is because there are lots of different types of templates within this one. This is kind of like the map. I don't know if you've ever done the interactive notebooks before. You know, some teachers do these where you have the composition notebook. You know, they're like the little smaller notebooks. And then sometimes teachers have students glue things into them or fold things or, you know, different stuff like that. And then they put them into their interactive notebook. I remember one time looking at those and thinking, it would be so cool to make this in PowerPoint. And if you do it that way, there are some other options that you can do other than just gluing things in or folding things or whatever. And so that's kind of the focus of this. So I wanted to show you some of the types of templates that you can use. And I want to start off here with this one. Oh, and by the way, before I go too much further, I did want to also show you, did you notice that in PowerPoint that the size of my slides or the orientation of my slides is like portrait? See, I changed the way that the slide looks because I wanted it to look like an interactive notebook or a composition notebook. Yeah, it's like a sheet of paper, like Cliff said. And so the way to do that, by the way, is you go to File, and then from there, I'm trying to remember because I may have set this up in a different place. Oh goodness, I can't remember it off the top of my head. It is in Slideshow. Oh my goodness, I'm blowing this in on the recording. Cliff is saying it might be in page setup. That's what I was just looking for. Transitions design. There it is. It's in design. That's right. Okay. So you click on design and it's under slide size. And so you've got the standard slide size and you've got the widescreen slide size. And then you can hit custom. And custom is where I changed it. So I changed it to 8.5 by 11 inches, standard paper size here in the United States. And so and the only reason I did that is because I wanted to go for that feel. So of course you can make these slides into whatever orientation you'd like. If you wanted it to be a big long strip, you could do that. If you want it to be a square, you could do that. Okay, Kathy's making me feel a little better. She said it used to be under File. Okay, so at least I'm not totally crazy here. That's good. Okay, so anyway, we got that taken care of. I want to show you this one because I think this is one of my favorite ones, is the ability to make a draggable template. So with the idea behind this is that I've got on my slide here, I've got like 4 categories for sorting. And I've put a whole bunch of vocabulary words off to the side. And what I want students to do is drag those vocabulary words into the categories to be able to sort them. So again, this is something that's different than just a traditional online document where you type things in. Marilyn says kind of like words their way. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, so what I could do is, you know, I was a high school Spanish teacher for more than 10 years. So for me, I might come in here and do like all of the color words in Spanish. Azul is blue, amarillo is yellow, rojo is red, naranjado is orange, morado is purple, and there's different versions of those words. But then I could do the categories and change the categories to say contain blue. Now I'm just pulling this, I'm just doing this off the top of my head, making up the categories and making up the words. You would do this the way that you would, that would make more sense for you. Contains yellow, contains red, and doesn't contain any of those. Okay. So what I can do now, by the way, all of these little words over here off to the side, these words off to the side are in shapes. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever added shapes to your slides before, but if you click the insert button, you have the shapes right here. And if you click on that, you'll notice that you have a whole bunch of different shapes that you can choose. The ones that I chose happen to be these rectangles with rounded corners, but you could use just about anything. There are arrows. We're actually going to use the arrows a little bit later. There are circles, there are starbursts, there are even speech bubbles and thought bubbles. And again, we're going to use those a little bit later too. Those are really fun. But if I wanted to create this from scratch, I use the rounded rectangle and I'm just going to draw it on here. Now, one thing that sometimes people don't realize about these shapes is that if you double click them, like I'm about to do, double click, notice you've got the blinking cursor. There's the text box built into them already. And so I could add, like this is actually orange, so it might make sense for this one to be orange. Now, notice that inside of this box, that text is kind of small. I might like it to be a little bit bigger. So I wanted to share with you a quick keyboard shortcut that I use all the time. And this works in a variety of different platforms, not just on PowerPoint. And so the way that I make the text bigger, because, you know, the way to make text bigger a lot of times is, you know, I could double click on it like this and I get that little pop-up. Or I could click on the home button and I could change the text here. And I go, let's make it 16. No, that's still not quite big enough. I really like using this one keyboard shortcut. And so I wanted to teach this keyboard shortcut to you real quick. If you hold in Control and Shift, and then push the period key. Now, by the way, if you have a Mac, it's Command Shift and the period key. But on my Surface tablet, I'm using Control Shift, period, period, period. You see how it's getting bigger, period. And then if I switch over and use the comma key, Control Shift, comma, comma, comma. Every time I push comma, it makes it smaller. Every time I push period, it makes it bigger. I use this keyboard shortcut all the time. All the time, all the time. I don't even use the drop down for the text size anymore. So I wanted to share that with you all. Susie Lolly just dropped something great in. I saw this a little, like right as I was getting started on that, on what I was talking about, and I knew I wanted to come back to it. Susie says it's also need for them to group them however they want. So I assume it's like important for them to group however they want and then title the categories to justify their thinking. That's great. Yes. And then Catherine and Ann chimed in and said, yeah, that was good. And then Susie followed up and said, when I took a gifted endorsement, it was called list group label. Similar to this, but they brainstormed their own words too. Yes. And so that's kind of the way that I set up this particular template, was to have the categories open for them to justify. And then I even had the vocabulary words over here. So you can specify as much as you want or as little as you want based on what you think your students need. So you could go and fill in all of the words and all the categories and assign it to them. And that wouldn't be nearly as rigorous and near as deep thinking as if you left it open in both parts. And then Susie also mentioned, Susie, I'm so glad you mentioned this. She said, and then title their categories to justify justify their thinking. Let's go a step further with that, because there's a little piece of Power and other slide presentation platforms too, that lend themselves to the justify their thinking part. Because if we have students sort these words into different categories, we can take it up another notch in like the depth of knowledge, you know, like the amount of critical thinking by having them justify why they put what they did where they did. And it's right down here. Notice that in PowerPoint, you have this part for speaker notes. So if we're using PowerPoint like this, the speaker notes is a perfect place to be able to have students justify their thinking. So right down here is where they would say, I made this category because, and then they might say, I put these words in that category because. And you might even preload this with some little sentence stems and have them, you know, kind of like start the sentence for them and then have them complete it. See, there is so much when it comes to this. There's so much stuff that you can do. So notice now that we have it, contains yellow, we're going to put honor and hado over here. By the way, another keyboard shortcut that I really, really like is Control D, the letter D, like duplicate, because it will duplicate that one, because orange, of course, contains red and yellow. We're going to take blue, which just contains blue, yellow just contains yellow. We had a question from Marilyn. I wonder if the drag and drop would work on the iPad PowerPoint version for K3. You know what? I'm not sure about that. I'd like to think that it would, because you can edit a PowerPoint presentation on an iPad. So I'm thinking that it probably would, but I would check it first. I know that's kind of a wishy-washy answer from me, but I didn't. Okay, so it looks like Susie says yes, it does. They would not be able to in presentation mode. Right, exactly. Very good. All right. So anyway, students are able to sort all of these out in any way that they need to, and then they can justify down at the bottom. So that's one type of template, interactive template that you can use. Now here's what I'd love to see in the comments, if anybody's willing to. Now that you've seen this and you've seen how we can drag and drop words into place, I would love to see in the comments, what are some ways that you could apply that? What are some ways that you could use that with students? For me, it was sorting color vocabulary words. But of course, there are lots of ways to use these draggable features. So if you would, in the chat, I would love for you to drop some ideas in when it comes to that. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on those, and I'm going to go back over them here in just a second. But for right now, I wanted to jump over to a different one. Let's go to the top, labeling an image. So this is another drag and drop activity that you could do. So I'm going to insert an image. Oh, I'm already seeing that there's a whole bunch of stuff coming in the chat. I'm going to get to those in just a second. This is so good. I'm going to insert a picture. Now, instead of just pulling something from my device, I'm going to do an online search. And this kind of thing fits really well with lots of different kinds of images. It could be a diagram of the digestive system. This could be a picture of, you know, like a landscape where you could label like the clouds and the trees and all of that. What I'm going to use this for is to pull up a historical painting. So for me, a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware. This is like a well-known painting that, and I pull this one in an awful lot. There it is right there. So we're going to put that image in as soon as it downloads. There it is. Actually, so that's just one little bit of it, but it actually kind of fits on the screen a little. So what's neat about this is you can pull in an image. So we're going to start just like that. And then notice that I dropped all of these little arrows in off to the side. Now let me stop for just a second and touch on that. Have you noticed that down here when we did movable vocabulary, all of the words were off to, and then up here in the labeling the image, all of the arrows are off to the side. This is kind of an important point, I think, when you're making these templates, is to think about what I like to call the workspace. I'm not sure if that's the actual name of it, but that's what I call it anyway. And I think the workspace is the space that's on the outside of the slides. And what I love to do is to drop helpful things for my students in those spaces. It saves them a little bit of time of having to having to draw some of those shapes in there or add little images or whatever. If I can sprinkle some of that stuff in around the edges and have it sitting there waiting for my students, then I think that can save them some time. Because what I want them to do is I want them to spend as much time as possible demonstrating understanding and as little time as possible monkeying with the features of PowerPoint. Because what I'm mostly interested in is what's in their brains and being able to see what they do. So the question from, I think, Olga was, how do you create that space? The truth is that it's already there. In fact, let me show you. If I go do a brand new presentation, can you see on this slide right here that there's some gray space around the outside? Now what you can do is you can use your zoom and zoom out. See, I'm going to use this little slider down at the bottom to zoom out. And you can see all of this gray space is all right there. It's always, always, always there. So that's kind of, you know, it's always just built in, sitting there waiting for you. So for me, I put all of these little arrows over here. And so for now, what we can do is we can take these arrows and drag them over. Okay, do you notice that my arrow is going behind my picture? One thing that is helpful whenever that happens is to send something to the back. And so what I'm going to do is, the problem is that the arrows are below the picture. And we want the picture to be in the back. So an easy way to do that, if you've never done this before, is to right click the picture, and I'm just going to send it to the back. If you can imagine, it's like all of these items on the screen are like a whole bunch of pieces of paper. And all of the pieces of paper are either on top of or below something else. And so by sending this to the back, I'm just sticking it down at the bottom so that everything is on top of it. I don't know if you've ever worked with that before. Olga says, so students should not touch the zoom feature to make it work, right? The zoom feature just allows you to zoom in and out from the slide. So see, whenever I do this, the students can zoom in if they want to, as far as I'm concerned. But whenever I zoomed out, it allowed me to see more of that space. I just like to zoom it in to a point where I can see mostly the slide. So it's kind of like that. That's the way that I like it. But yeah, you can do that either way. Let's see. So how could we use this? You know, obviously we could use it to identify people. So who's this guy right here? That's George Washington. And we could, I'm just kind of like ad-libbing here and making stuff up. I know that this isn't like a very rigorous academic task, but that is a flag. Now notice what I can do is I can even resize this a little bit so that the text and the arrow fit a little bit better. And then that right there appears to be a sword. Okay. Now, again, like we were talking about earlier, we can use the speaker notes right down here to justify our thinking. So if we want to describe more about the things that we labeled, we can always type them in there because that's always there. Diane asks, doesn't this mean that students can only manipulate arrows in the editing mode and not the presentation mode? Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Whenever we're doing these interactive templates, they're made for editing mode. Presentation is going to lock everything into place, and it's, yeah, that's going to keep us from moving things around. So yeah, this whole activity is done in editing mode. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And then Cliff asked, do you ever find that students struggle because they accidentally move the objects on the slide that you have placed there? Yes, absolutely. So let me share real quick a trick that you can use. Let's use this one, for example, the comic strips one. So another type of template you can do is to have students make comic strips. This one actually I think would be better if it was vertical instead of horizontal instead of vertical. But we'll just kind of stick with it the way that it is. I'm going to move these around just a smidge here. I'm going to copy paste and stick those down there, because what I really want is I want 6 of them on the screen like this. Yeah, there we go. To resize all of them. And then we're going to move it up just a little bit. And then we're going to move it down just a little bit. There, that's a little bit better. By the way, if you want to know how I just resized all of those, I just highlighted all of them. So I'm holding in the Shift key, click, 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 click. I'm still holding the Shift key. Actually, I don't even have to still hold the Shift key. Whenever you have all of them clicked like that, then if you resize one, it resizes all of them, which is kind of a neat thing. So Cliff was asking, do you ever find that students struggle because they accidentally moved objects on the slide? And so there's a couple of ways that you can get around that. This is the easiest way that I can think of to make it work, is I'm going to take this slide and anything that I don't want students to move around, I'm going to put it on this slide. So in this case, it's all 6 of the boxes. Now watch this trick. File, save as, where is it? Export. Nope, it's save as. Okay, so I'm going to take that one slide and I'm going to save that one slide, not as a PowerPoint presentation, but as an image. This is going to be a PNG image. You could do a JPEG image as well, either way. So I'm going to change that to a PNG image. There it is right there. And that one was the comic strips template, right? So once I've done that and I've renamed it, I'm going to hit the save button. Notice it gives me a little dialog here. Which slides do you want to export? I just want to save that one slide as an image. Okay, this is still touching on Cliff's question of what happens if students accidentally move things around that they're not supposed to move around. So if I save that one image, check out what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take all of the stuff that I just saved. You know what happens when you save a slide as an image? When you save a slide as an image, everything gets locked into place and you can't move it around anymore. I hit a right click and I'm going to change the background. Format the background. And so from here, I just decide that I am going to change the background to, looks like it's just got fills. Trying to change the background. I know that I'm able to do this. Does anybody feel a little bit better about themselves knowing that I'm wrestling with this a little bit? Usually over here, it gives you the option to change it to an image. And for some reason, it's not doing it right now. So that's the trick that I usually use. Now, another way that you can do this is you can go view the slide master. And the slide master, like for instance, we could take all of these that we had, and we could put them on a master slide, and then see whenever we're done with that, we'll go ahead and close it. Oh, but it assigned it to all of the slides as the master. I did that wrong. But anyway, one way to do this, see this, this is what happens when I try to do things on the fly. But whenever you assign it to the master, then it shows up on all of them. So, okay, so it looks like some of you are saying under the design tab is the is the change background. So there's all of this, format the background, and it's only showing me. I think that's where it's supposed to be. For some reason, it's not working for me, but I just wanted to give you that idea so that you're able to, so that you kind of know how that works. That's just a quick answer to Kathy. That's just a quick answer to your question about what happens if students move things around. Like it worked on this one. Let's see if I can format the background on this one. Yeah, see, this is the way it's supposed to look like. I don't know why it wasn't looking like this on the other one, but on this one, you can see I have picture source. And then if I insert a picture, and with this one, that's what I did with this coordinate plane, because I don't want them moving the coordinate plane around. I insert the picture from the source, and then it sets the background as the picture, and then I can't move around. See, I'm trying to click on that coordinate plane and move it and drag it, and I can't do it. So yeah, that would totally work. So okay, good stuff. Thank you, Hive Mind, for everybody that was watching and was helping me work through that. Okay, so we talked about dragging labels. We talked about dragging vocabulary words. And so I wanted to jump back in real quick to the chat. I wanted to see, hear me, I think I'm having some trouble with Teams. I'm afraid that Teams is frozen. Not sure if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you. Can you hear this?
Oh, there we go. I think it's working. Okay, sorry about that. I think that my Teams locked up for just a second. So there we go. Okay. You guys could probably hear me the whole time, couldn't you? Okay, yep, I can hear you. I can hear you. Now I'm seeing all the comments. Thank you for that. Okay, so anyway, I was talking about the different kinds of templates that we've talked about. Sorry, that kind of like threw me for a loop there for a second. But what I wanted to do, if it's going to let me do this, is I want to go back up in the chat for just a second and take a look at some of the examples of what we can do as far as the draggables go. Like what are some of the examples that you all dropped in, because there was a ton of really good examples. Like math words that go with that was Jessica that said that. Sorting myths or untruths and facts about any topic you're studying. Donna says information about parts of the atom. Yes, definitely. Allies versus Axis, according to Tanya. Science, characteristics of living things. We got names versus countries, times, themes. Elementary, group the main idea and the details. This is really good stuff. Kathy says, just this interactive movable vocab makes this presentation super. Types of words, we've got computer science and web design, HTML tags. Yeah, absolutely. That would be great for teaching HTML tags. States of matter and characteristics, lots and lots of different things. Kathy says you could use it in your a Venn diagram as well. So yeah, any of that stuff would totally work. That's good stuff. So, and then Becca says algebra tiles. Oh yeah, that's a great idea too. I really like that. Okay. So we've talked about those. I wanted to jump into another type of, and somebody mentioned this, I think, in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and touch on the Caption This activity. This is another one that could be a lot of fun with the different kinds of templates that you can make. So Caption This is the idea that if you insert an image, I'm going to try to find a picture in my camera roll real quick. Let's see. There's a picture of me thinking. I wonder what I'm thinking about. It's probably not anything too deep. So what you can do is you can add a picture within Caption this, and then notice what I've got over here in the workspace. I've got some speech bubbles and thought bubbles just sitting here waiting to be used. So let's grab one of these little thought bubbles and bring it over. Again, my thought bubble is behind the picture. Can you remember what we're supposed to do? I'm going to right click and do what? It's just giving you a second to think to yourself. If anybody puts it in the chat, that's okay too. I'm going to right click and I'm going to send it to the back. I'm going to send that picture to the back, right? Yeah. Oh, good. Some of you were seeing it. Very good. All right. So Sheila and Olga both say, put it in front, send it to the front. Yes, that's what I want to do with the thought bubble. That's perfect. Okay, so notice that I dragged it over here. Do you also see right down here, there's this little orange dot next to the tail of the thought bubble? Watch what happens if I click and drag that. I can move it right over here to my head. So now it's set up just right so that it looks like I'm thinking. Again, remember, double click the shape to make it a text box. And now I can type what I'm thinking. I'd really like grilled cheese for lunch. My daughter had a grilled cheese sandwich today and it looked really good. So see, and then I used my keyboard shortcut, Control Shift, period key to make it bigger, comma key to make it smaller. And so now I've got this thought right here. Now, to just put a picture of myself thinking and putting, I'd really like grilled cheese for lunch, not much of an academic task. But whenever we start applying these thought bubbles in different ways, this can get really cool. For instance, I'm going to copy this one and go back up to Washington crossing the Delaware. Let's get rid of these. And we're going to paste this thought bubble going to Washington. And so now we can take this academic task and we can give it a new layer of a little bit deeper thinking by saying, what do you think Washington was thinking as he was crossing the Delaware? In this moment, what do you think he was thinking? And so this is yet another way for students to be able to show what they know, to demonstrate their understanding, just in a little bit different way. And another thing that this has going for it, this particular activity, is that it shows perspective. We're not thinking in terms of like me as the student in the class. Now we have to put ourselves in the shoes of Washington. And based on what we've learned, we have to try to figure out what we think he would be thinking right now. So he might say something like, are we crazy? Maybe he'll say, I can't feel my toes, because it was very cold as they were doing this. Another thing that I like about this is that you can have some fun with it. You can let your humor show, because really, if you're able to get your idea across and do so in a funny way, that's even a higher level of understanding. Because not only do you just have to know what Washington was thinking, you also have to be able to analyze what's kind of incongruent about it, or how you might feel if you were in that situation. It's a little deeper level of thinking. So if you've got students who are a little bit witty, and if they're able to bring a little bit of humor in that, then that could be a whole different thing. So anyhow, that's that. So with Caption this, you can pull in pictures, artwork, a variety of different things. Another thing that you can do that's a lot of fun when it comes to this, and this was like the comic strip we were talking about earlier, is that we can click on this. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's make this one a little bit smaller, and our text is going to be a little smaller. Now watch what happens. Let's imagine that I had a series of pictures. 1, 2, and then let's say 3, 4. I know those don't totally fit on the slide, but let's pretend that they do. And let's also pretend that each of these images was something different. It wasn't just 4 pictures of me thinking. It was me doing different things. Or let's say, for instance, that we had that I had a partner who was in there with me. you know, 2 people in there, then you could be bouncing ideas back and forth, maybe with the speech bubbles instead of the thought bubbles. Let me throw another crazy idea in all of this. Insert pictures, online pictures. Let's say, for instance, that we were studying Newton's laws. And so as we were studying Newton's laws, let's take a picture of Sir Isaac Newton, make him a little bit smaller, stick him right here. Use that Control-D to duplicate my picture. Control-D to duplicate my picture, and then Control-D to duplicate my picture. Now what we can do, a little too far, that's what happens when the scroll bar gets away from me, is that this thought bubble is going to me. Now, let's make this thought bubble going to Newton. This would be better as speech bubbles, I think. But do you see what we're doing here? Is we're having a back and forth conversation. We're having a back and forth conversation between me and Newton. So this is like having a conversation with a historical figure, or having a conversation with a literary figure, or something like that. So anyway, that's pretty cool. Let's see, we're having some questions about usage of images. Sheila says unsplash.com has a great selection of free photos. Yes, absolutely, you can add those. Leslie asks, are the online photos in PowerPoint okay to use without citing? The thing that I did when I went to insert pictures, online pictures. Now, there's a couple things to think about when it comes to these pictures. When it comes to using the pictures and then publishing them someplace where everybody else is going to see them, that's where you really need to keep an eye on copyright. And so what I did, I'm going to click on Airplane. Notice that this has a little checkbox that says Creative Commons only. Creative Commons is a license to use images. And depending on the type of Creative Commons license, there's a whole bunch of them. It gives some stipulations on how you can use them. But basically within this, it's saying what Creative Commons basically says is you can use this image as long as you give attribution. That's the way the vast majority of them work. So in this case, if I wanted to use this picture of the airplane and I hit insert, check this out. Have you noticed that with all of the pictures, they have these little tags on them? And it shows the attribution information. Now this says by unknown author, These are not attributed very well. In what's it called? In Unsplash, a lot of them are public domain images, and so you don't have to cite those. Catherine dropped in creativecommons.org. That's another place where you can get Creative Commons images that you can use. Another one that's a favorite of mine is photosforclass.com. I'm gonna put that one into the chat, photosforclass.com. And what's neat about that is it will pull the attribution information and stick it into the image. So if you're gonna be publishing these beyond the classroom, then that's something that you definitely want to keep an eye on. Okay, so as far as other types of templates that you could use, this is another one that I mentioned. Now, fair warning, I am trained as a Spanish teacher and not as a math teacher. So on what to do with a coordinate plane, if you want to drop some of this stuff into the chat of what you could do with this, that would be fantastic. But I'm just going to show you a way that you could make a template out of a coordinate plane. So we've got points here that we can drag into place. Use the arrows to fine tune that a little bit. So if we want to plot points on a coordinate plane. Ooh, John said pixel art. Yeah, that could totally work. Because you could use, I didn't even think about doing pixel art for this. So watch this, I'm going to insert a shape and make it a rectangle shape. We're going to put it in right there. Use my Control-D to duplicate. And look at this. I'm going to hold in Shift to highlight 2 of them. I think I am anyway. Oh, I was hitting the wrong button. Control-D to duplicate. Now I've got 2 of them. Control-D to duplicate. And now I've got 4 of them. And then, of course, you can change the background, the fill color of these in Home. see their shape, fill, and I could change it to a different color if I want to. Now it turns into pixel art. That's clever. I like that. Gloria says labeling a coordinate plane, graphing. Rebecca says transformations or translations. Anne says symmetrical shapes. And there's functions. Sheila dropped a link to a Larry Perlazzo best lists of using photos in lessons. So we're kind of going on two things here, on math and on images. Laurel says single coordinate plane, have students plot themselves and choose axes, X number of siblings, Y number of pets, fun get to know you activity. I really like that. That's cool. So of course you can plot the points, and then you can also insert under shapes. There are also lines. So I could click on a line and bring, or I could click on one and connect the two. And while that is highlighted, I can come up here to the, let's see, we're going to right click on this. There are ways to make it bigger too. I'm kind of struggling with it right now, but that's okay. So anyway, that's yet another one. I've even got a Likert scale on here. You know, Likert scale is like on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like this? So this could even be a quick check that you could throw in at the end of an activity to say how well do you understand that on a scale of 1 to 5. And then there's a text box where they can just describe why they put what they did. Whole bunch of different stuff that you can use when it comes to this. So in this particular, if you're interested in getting this particular notebook as an example, that is available on my templates page, which again is at ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. Dropping it into the chat real quick. So if you didn't get that, if you got it here a little bit later, that's where you can find this. And if we scroll and we scroll and we scroll, we will find that right here is the interactive notebook template that I was just working with. You can download a copy of it. You can even read the blog post that went with it. And then you can also scroll down through and you can see some of the other templates that I have available there. So lots of stuff that you can work from. So with that in mind, real quick before we finish up, if you go to q.org/Microsoft, you can find this page, which has more presentations. We can find the schedule right here. In fact, in about 3 minutes, I'm going to start another session called a Lesson Design Remix. This is one where we all get together. Nobody has an agenda at the beginning, except that we're going to say, hey, what's something that you teach and how can we all work together to come up with creative ways to teach it? Lesson Design Remix. That's what that's going to be all about. We're going to do that right after this one. But this is where you can go, q.org/Microsoft to find other sessions. And then if you want to see session videos, replays of everything, then this is the place to go. You click on this little tab up here. Phew, that was a lot. Hopefully that wasn't too much. Hopefully you're not overwhelmed. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to wrap this up right here. So thanks again so much for joining. There's a whole bunch of us here. I was thrilled to see how many of you were here, and thank you for sharing all of your ideas and thoughts in the chat as well. So I'm going to wrap up here, and then I'm going to head off to the next session, which starts right after this Lesson Design Remix. Would love to see any of you in that session. Thank you for the kind comments as you're leaving, and I hope to get to see you on another one of these webinars. This was fun. So take care, be safe, be well. We'll see you on the next one.